Okay, so I've made some progress here. As you can see, I have a little, I got it up there where you can stick in the contract terms and an address, and it'll actually submit and pull up the contract ID. And let me show you now the code. So there are some little tricks here. Let me bring it where I can see it well. Okay, so what I ended up having to do is anything that you do once. Well, first of all, let me start up at the top here. Everything that you're going to get a state on, you declare it here in the constructor. Any of your methods, you're going to bind them to the class. So it's this dot handle submit, this dot handle submit bind. And then in component did mount, this is where you get things like the accounts and so on. And that's, you get everything you get once, you do that here. Now there are a couple of methods here. Well, first one, then I moved a lot of the code to what happens when you actually click deploy. So there are, I did have methods for updating the terms, updating the address, and now this I was using when I was trying to save hard save values right before I went and actually updated. This is a little trick that I didn't even know, and I've worked with React. Basically, React doesn't necessarily do this state stuff. You would think it would be synchronous, but no. So what would happen is I'd set a value and I'd get come back as a null value. It turns out that the way this is something and I had never known this before, by making it a method here, and I'll show you where I use it. Let's see. So this is the deploy, when you deploy the contract. I do this set state function, and that updates it, and it makes sure it's done in order. And then you pass in the current state, and then the things you're going to update, like the instance, and it returns it when it's done. So now I can trust these values, and it will work correctly. The other thing, now these methods here, these are events, so if you update the term, if you type something in that terms box, it'll call this method and set the state. Same thing with the address. And when you hit submit, it deploys it. Now this event.prevent defaults, that keeps it from trying to refresh the whole thing and go back to the constructor. So I had to put that in there. So there are a couple of little tricks here, particularly because you're dealing with asynchronous events and timing. And the one thing I noticed is it wasn't particularly fast. You can hit the button. It can take a little bit before the update. Here is where you do the rendering. If you know React, you know you have your little return, which is your render. So here's our form. Here's the input, our submit button, and then the display. So as you can see, we're interacting with the contract, we're doing a deploy, we're able to get the values back, and we're able to then display them. And now, of course, we could have our, put the values in rather than hard coding them, which is kind of nice. So let's see. Now, as you can see from looking at the screen here, you gotta put in this real messy number. And if I would want, the thing I'd want to do if I was trying to make this something someone can actually use, and this gets back to what we spoke to a little bit the other day about being able to buy what did they call it? ENS, Ethereum Name Services, rather than having to put this mess in here. So how would you do it practically? Well, you can use an ENS, a name for your address. And the other thing you can, if you really want to do it in a very simplistic fashion, you can have your addresses on a piece of paper, not piece of paper, in a notepad on the computer, on a text editor, and then just copy and paste. Which is what you actually, when you're actually moving crypto, you're on Binance or wherever you move your crypto around, generally you do a copy and paste. You don't want to risk typing these things in, because you make a mistake and that money is gone. Okay, so anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. I know I haven't really prettied this up at all or done anything to it, and but functionally you can take the two, and I'd include the amount, and that gets interesting in terms of Wave versus Ether and all that. But point is, this will work. It will give you your contract ID. And now if you think about how you would use this, so someone goes on to, they put in the contract, and they have, when they run the thing, they have the contract and they have their address, and they know the contract has stored the address of the customer and then the address of the provider. So it can take the address, and it can take once it gets the contract with the contract ID, it can then look at the address and say, is this the provider, is this the consumer, and then look at the state of things and figure out what it's supposed to do next. And that's kind of a goal with something like, to me that would be a goal of something like this, to be able to, you don't have to think about the next step. Like when we were going through it manually, it can just come back and say, it works marked as completed. Oh, the work, it's completed. So now you get to approve the work. Do you approve the work? And now the work's approved. Do you want to, now you can pay. So, but anyway, this is a little bit of a start. We're actually taking the contract address and the terms, we're sending them to the contract and to do a deployment, and we get back the contract ID. So hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, please give a like. Please subscribe. Please ring the bell to get further videos. Please share it with your friends if this is something of interest to them. And take care, and I will speak to you next time.